One of the recurring tropes in video games, especially in JRPGs, is being thrown into a fight that is unwinnable. The design of such a fight and the effect of it on the player is something I have always been fascinated about. Let's talk about that one JRPG battle you aren't supposed to win. My earliest memory of scripted fights like that is in Breath of Fire 3 for the PS1. Coincidentally, also one of my favorite games on the console. The game uses this particular design element liberally as a way to tell its story in the first act, and to this day, I think it's one of the best implementations of this idea. Already at the very beginning of the game, you are faced with a version of this trope, as you wake up as a dragon baby wreaking havoc, turning the miners who unearthed you into ash. The game forces you to attack them, as everything they do to you will make you retaliate with a generous helping of your fire breath, only to conclude in one of the foremen smacking you in the face with a crane. It makes sense story-wise for you to not to be in control, because the main character himself had just been born and doesn't really know what's going on. This also serves as a nice little introduction to the combat, giving the player the opportunity to familiarize themselves with the system without worrying about losing. Since it's our first experience with the combat system, the player has no expectations yet, so this works pretty effectively, without feeling weird. As you make your way through the first part of the game, at a certain point you encounter the dastardly duo Balio and Sunder. The two horse-headed bandits set fire to your newfound home and generally aren't very nice, so the party takes up arms to get rid of them. However, as the fight starts, the player realizes quickly that something is off. The damage output is incredibly high, and with the lack of any indication of whether you're hurting them or not, this seems a bit fair on the surface. And as you inevitably fall to the two villains, it becomes clear you weren't supposed to win this battle, as you wake up on your own in a shack and the game continues normally. Fun fact, in order to really make this impossible, Balio and Sunder don't even have an enemy ID tied to them. In this particular fight, you're punching ghosts. The sprites don't have any HP value attached to them, so they're technically not real enemies. Even if you were infinitely strong, the fight would just go on forever, until you die. This of course is a little lame, but it makes sense story-wise. Instead of just having the enemy whack you over the head in a cutscene, an effective tool of making the player feel hopeless is letting them experience it firsthand by throwing them into a fight they can't win. This example in particular is especially mean because it almost feels like you have a chance. They don't outright one-shot you, and with enough preparation and some leveling up, you can actually extend the fight for a pretty long time. There are some game design considerations to be done if you want to put a fight like this in front of your players. Is the player going to try their absolute best to win the fight, use all items and resources they have to win, only for all of it to be wasted? Will they not even realize it's an unwinnable battle and reset the console before even dying? But this isn't the only time you meet the two gangsters. On the second encounter, you have to face them by yourself, without your friends. And despite the fact you have gotten a bit stronger, in a normal playthrough, this is still considered unwinnable. However, technically it is possible to beat them in this encounter, which makes this the second way of handling these types of battles, allowing the player to win but making them lose in the cutscene. Breath of Fire does this brilliantly in this scene. If the player puts up a serious fight, Balio and Sunder will comment on how this isn't how it's supposed to work, and they flee if you beat them, even rewarding you with experience and a chance for some items to drop. The average player will die here though, which still isn't that bad, as your princess sidekick managed to hide while you were distracting them. This is a satisfying way of structuring the encounter, because losing this fight still makes perfect sense, and if you go through the effort of leveling up until you can beat them, you get a funny line of dialogue. Sure, it would be nice to dispatch them right then and there, but then the developers would have to write an alternative story route where the next 4 hours of the game don't happen, because Balio and Sunder are an integral part in continuing the story by leading the player with their shenanigans. Alternative routes like this are interesting, but they can require a lot of extra work for the developers to create content that many people might not even get to experience unless they deliberately start a new playthrough for it. Also, players might feel like they are missing out when there are multiple paths available. Moving on, a bit later in the Contest of Champions, you meet the illustrious Gar, a powerful warrior that even Balio and Sunder are afraid of, and would you know it, you do have to fight him too. This fight is already set up in the story to be scary, because at this point you're still a child bumbling about and this man takes up like 4 times the space on the map. No, literally, he can't fit into many corners and hallways, as you find out later when he joins your party. This fight is set up to be properly impossible again, and while we might be tired of getting our asses kicked at this point, thankfully it's the last time it happens. After this battle, not only we get the badass warrior to join our party, but shortly after that we get our long-awaited payoff fighting Balio and Sunder, and this time even with their ultimate move of fusing together, we unceremoniously send them to the afterlife. This illustrates perfectly what a forced loss is meant to be. It's a setup. We're setting up a powerful villain that is too strong for the party to beat, and once we do, we get a sense of how much we have grown. The overarching themes of JRPGs usually revolve around a ragtag team of adventurers becoming stronger as they overcome the various trials of their story and giving the player a powerful enemy to look forward to beating, not only in story, but also in combat. It is an effective tool to make them feel engaged. This is the quintessential advantage of video games as a medium. By making the player lose to the bad guys and not only the characters, you fuel their desire to become stronger and to continue playing. Especially in this case, where Balio and Sunder are playing with you, killing your friends, trying to sell you to the King of India, you're just waiting for an opportunity to become strong enough to finally wipe their faces off the earth once and for all. In context of other game challenges such as action games, this type of motivation would occur naturally, as hard bosses might become a roadblock organically and the player would have to improve their skill at the game to beat them. In JRPGs, challenges are usually reserved to optional bosses, as to not halt the pace of the already slower story progression compared to other games. Looking at it from a developer's perspective, this makes total sense. Give the player of any skill level the opportunity to enjoy your story and let the diehard players find the secret super bosses in the far corners of the world for the extra challenge. Unwinnable battles can be a powerful tool to immerse the player into the story and give them the opportunity to relate to the struggles of the characters within games. However, there is a fine line between making it a memorable experience or just tricking your player into giving them false hope, or by making them feel cheated when they can't win a fight that seems totally doable. In my opinion, Breath of Fire 3 does this perfectly, but there are a lot of other examples that are great or not so great. Let me know what your most memorable unwinnable battle is, whether it be a positive or negative example. I thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.